Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 10 of the Tour de France. Now today's stage at 148 kilometers, 4 categorized climbs, you gotta focus again on the last climb because every one of these next coming stages here at the Tour de France are gonna have a ton of climbs, and we're gonna start getting into the week of racing at the Tour de France where it's just summit finish after summit finish. Today's last climb at 19 kilometers, and they're calling it 4%, is realistically more of about 22 because there's a sprint line bonus just before the climb, and after that it's going to start going up, and it's going to go up to the top, and there's going to be an airport ramp up top that still is going to keep climbing to the finish. So I'm going to call the last climb at least 22 kilometers. Now the big news of the day is George Bennett from UAE Team Emirates. He is out with COVID. On top of George Bennett being out, Rafael Majka has a soft positive. What does that mean? I don't know. I can't tell you. I'm not a scientist and I'm not a doctor. I'm just a guy who does the butterfly effect here for you fans that enjoy bike racing. But my best perspective of a soft positive is it's just not quite there enough to get everybody else sick, I guess. Anyways, Rafael Majka is starting the race here on stage 10. But UAE Team Emirates with Vegard Stakulangan also out because of COVID. Now they're down to just 6 riders. So a lot of the tactics you saw on yesterday's stage 9, they better not be employing here on stage 10 or they could be in big trouble come later to Tour de France. Now, when we're going through the neutral section, there's a little bit of a delay because Dylan Groenewegen has some kind of bike issue. So the race organizers are holding up the Tour de France on stage 10. After Dylan Groenewegen comes back, we're going to hold up the race a little bit more because it's Benjamin Thomas from Cofidis that's back there with his team car. This was a little comical here. I've never seen a rider change his shoes, put shoes on, and then possibly change back or have his shoes adjusted again. I'm not certain exactly what was happening because the camera went back up to the front of the peloton and then back to Benjamin Thomas. But we're already well past kilometer 0, and I was just kind of amazed when I'm sitting in the studio watching Benjamin Thomas messing around with his shoes, wondering, man, what do you do if they just light this race up and start it? Well, they don't. They wait for Benjamin Thomas. He gets back on, and then they're going to wait a little bit more because they got to get through this next town where they have some issues going on at the Tour de France. When the racing starts proper, it's full gas here at the Tour de France throughout the 50 Ks from the kilometer 0 or wherever you want to mark it on today's stage, all the way to about 95 kilometers to go. Then we're going to see a break of 4 of Sanchez, Philippe Gilbert, Dylan Van Baarle, and Pierre Rolland. This group of 4 is throwing down. They want to make a selection here at the Tour de France, and they're going to be joined by 21 more riders here at the Tour de France. So it took just about 65 kilometers out of this 148 kilometer stage before we see this massive break of 25. When you're looking at this break of 25, you want to focus on a lot of things, but the first one has to be the best on the general classification. That's Leonard Kamna. Leonard Kamna from Bora Hansgrohe is 8 minutes and 43 seconds down on the general classification. When we go back to the peloton, UAE Team Emirates are sitting up. Time gap starts floating up, and all of a sudden we're up to 3 minutes, then we're up to 5 minutes. Once we get up to 5 minutes, we still look back there at UAE Team Emirates. It's really Mikkel Berg up there riding tempo. Now, I saw Mark Hirschi get dropped early on this stage with about 100 kilometers to go. He'll find his way back up to the peloton once the speeds drop, and Mark Hirschi will be back in there. That'll give UAE Team Emirates 6 guys. Now, at no point in time while I was watching the Tour de France did I see Mark Hirschi pulling on the front. This is a wise tactic here from UAE Team Emirates because Mark Hirschi's had a hard first week of racing here at the Tour de France, and now we're on stage 10. So, because that group up there, the highest threat, Leonard Kamna, at only 8 minutes and 43 seconds, they turned the gas completely off with UAE Team Emirates, and basically they're just riding Mikkel Berg up on the front of the peloton. You might have a little bit of help with Marc Soler when they go up the penultimate KOM here, but other than that, Mikkel Berg did the bulk of the work once that group of 25 riders went up the road. All of a sudden, the time gap starts going up to about 7 minutes, and then with 45 kilometers to go, it's going to be the EF Education rider Alberto Bettiol that's throwing in attack. He's got about a 20-second gap, and he'll have just about 25-second gap when he flies through the protesters here that you see in the picture. He dodges straight through them and then keeps getting full on the gas, and then the motorcycle comes up to him and says, Alberto Bettiol, you got to shut it down. When we go back and we look at that picture and rewind the tape, you're going to see that all of the protesters here laying in the middle of the street, they're all chained by their neck together and stuff, so they don't want to be moved. Now, supposedly this was an environmental protest here, but you got to remember, this is a bike race. Bike racing is green breathing, green everything, right? As green as you can get, at least, and still have something to do in life, with the exception of all the cars following behind, I know. But in general, they're promoting bike riding, right? So this is about as green as you can get in my book. Now we take a look at Bettiol. He's a little bit nervous. He's riding circles around all the cars. He rides counterclockwise, he rides clockwise, he's flipping his bike all around. It did see him cool himself off a little bit when he first stopped, but otherwise the kid is completely nervous. We go back to the break of 24 riders that was chasing him about 20 seconds back before this protest. These guys are all sitting in the sun trying to relax. Now I want to take you back to the peloton, because as UAE Team Emirates led peloton come to a stop, we're going to see all the riders getting rehydrated, getting ice packs put down their back, and then we're going to go over to Peter Sagan. Peter Sagan's a character, as we all know. That's why he's well loved, along with his massive wins throughout his career, and his 3 Road World Championships helped in that matter. But when we look at Peter Sagan at this moment, he's looking in through his director's window while he's drinking a Coca-Cola, and he's checking out the bike race. If you look at his phone, we see Alberto Bettiol in the phone right there as he's watching the bike race, because it had to start before the peloton did. So he's watching the Tour de France live right there at the back of the peloton by his director's car. Kind of comical scene at this point in time. Now, this protest lasted 12 minutes before they got going. And realistically, besides Peter Sagan, the next guy I want to highlight that did probably the best amount of enjoyment out of this 12 minutes has to be Marc Soler. Spanish rider from UAE Team Emirates. He took advantage of actually sitting down on the grass and enjoying a moment here at the Tour de France, checking out the views. Once the racing gets going, Alberto Bettiol, he's flying on the pedals because he's trying to get some gap on the 24 riders behind. As he comes into the final climb here at the Tour de France with about 22 kilometers to go. Once he starts going under the banner, the kid's got about a 20-second gap on the group of 24 behind. Sorry, I almost call it the peloton. It's a massive group back there, and it's being led by Jack Bauer chasing for Bike Exchange. Jack Bauer has Nick Schultz in this group, and he knows if he can get Nick Schultz close to the finish of today's stage and keep Alberto Bettiol reeled in, it'll give his teammate a chance of winning. Now, up there, Jack Bauer is doing a solid job, and when they start to climb proper, they got about a 9-minute gap to the UAE-led peloton behind. Now, let me remind you guys, at this point in time, Leonard Kamna is really basically on the edge of taking the race leader's yellow jersey when this climb starts proper. When we start looking up forward, Alberto Bettiol is throwing in a big dig. Zimmerman will be the rider from Intermarché. That'll be first to bridge across to Alberto Bettiol, and then we'll see the group start to expand. This group gets to be about a dozen, and then Alberto Bettiol throws in another tack. He's throwing in this tack because the more time Alberto Bettiol can spend up at the front, it'll allow his teammate back there, Magnus Cort Nelson, one of the fastest riders in this group, to try to get a free ride to the finish line. Only problem is Magnus Cort Nelson's having a hard time holding on to the front attacks of this group of about a dozen riders. Now, Alberto Bettiol will get brought back in with about 7 kilometers to go. And with 6.5 kilometers to go, it's Bahrain victorious Fred Wright that's on the front pulling. Fred Wright knows he has Luis Leon Sanchez back there. And so basically it's the same MO as Bike Exchange at the bottom of the climb riding for their teammates. Alberto Bettiol riding all the way from the beginning through the middle of this climb, and now it's Fred Wright for Bahrain victorious that's riding on the front for his fast man, Luis Leon Sanchez. Now, after Fred Wright's done with about 6 kilometers to go, Luis Leon Sanchez throws in a vicious attack, and he's got about a 20-second gap on the group behind. That group behind starts splitting up as it's Matteo Jorgensen that throws in a big attack from Movistar. Jorgensen's not on his own for too long because it's going to be Nick Schultz from Bike Exchange. Nick Schultz throwing in hard. He catches up to Matteo Jorgensen and then throws in his own attack, trying to go across up front to Luis Leon Sanchez. Matteo Jorgensen will catch on soon afterwards. And if we look at the picture, the fourth rider in the back, not quite able to close the gap, is Ineos' own Dylan van Baarle. He's trying to salvage the Tour de France first week here, the first half of the Tour de France that is on stage 10, and pull Ineos a chance at a stage win here. Now up front, those three riders, they start playing around a little bit, and with 1K to go, it's Dylan Van Barley that attaches onto that group of three, and now we got 4 riders in the front. Doesn't take Dylan Van Barley to do the math too quickly because he realizes he's not the fastest legs in this group. He'll throw in an attack at about 850 meters to go, but Matteo Jorgensen, Nick Schultz, and Luis Leon Sanchez will bring the Ineos rider back almost right away. Now the problem is there's a group behind. It's being led by Leonard Kamna. Leonard Kamna at 7K to go. He was in the race leader's yellow jersey. Solid here on this last climb. Not solid really because it's only 8 seconds, but 8 seconds still puts you in the yellow. At this point in time, the yellow jersey could change hands, and we're talking only 1 kilometer to go here in the race. Now up front, that group of 4, they start playing around. They caught the front group as Leonard Kamna's coming off. Hold on tight, Leonard Kamna. You got to push all the way to the line because the yellow jersey can swing anyway. With 400 meters to go, it's Benjamin Tomas from Cofidis that throws in attack. Wait, Cofidis. Let's back up the film and go back to kilometer 0 when it's Benjamin Tomas that was having that shoe issue. Right now, 400 meters to go, Benjamin Tomas going up the left side of the road. He doesn't have a shoe issue, but he's got a power issue, and it's draining fast. Next rider that throw in attack, Luis Leon Sanchez, with about 275 meters to go. He's still got some form left in his leg. He's going up the right side of the road. The only problem is he's got Nick Schultz, Bike Exchange, locked onto his wheel, and guess who survived this climb? Now he's been off the back. It's Magnus Cort Nelson. He went off the back, he got back on, and he has suffered all the way up this climb, and was one of the last groups to bridge with just about 500 meters to go. Now it's 250 meters to go. He's sitting third wheel on the Bike Exchange rider. Then 150 meters is when Nick Schultz starts his attack. He comes flying by at 100 meters to go over Luis Leon Sanchez. Only problem is Magnus Cort Nelson's got a little bit of gas, but we just don't know how much. Remember, he's been hurting all the way up this climb. With 50 meters to go, they're side by side, and as they come to the line, it's a bike throw. EF Education's Magnus Cort Nelson takes the stage. Now that was some suffering here from EF Education's Easy Post rider as he suffered all the way up this climb, doing a marvelous job. And let me remind you guys, it was because of his teammate Alberto Bettiol up the road that allowed Magnus Cort Nelson to be able to save his legs as much as he could. Leonard Kamna, who crossed the line in 10th, 22 seconds back on the stage winner Magnus Cort Nelson, because remember, he was in the race leader's yellow jersey. When the Bora Hansgrohe rider crossed the line, it was 10th out of this group, but he still could have the race leader's jersey. Now we go back down the hill to the peloton. UAE Team Emirates is riding the front, but they're not going full gas. They're just basically taking this climb nice and easy throughout the whole stage. When we look at the front, it's Marc Soler on the front, but it's not strung out. Nobody's coming off the back if they're a GC favorite anyways on this final stage here of 10. Now UAE Team Emirates, they ride a steady pace. Finally, we see a little bit of nervousness back there as it starts to fan out, so we can still tell the speeds aren't that high. That means we definitely could have a yellow jersey change here on stage 10. Now, clearly with 1.5 kilometers to go, I'll show you the picture. It's the sprinter, the Intermarché sprinter, Pasqualon, that's still in this front group. So you know UAE Team Emirates, Pogačar was not worried about losing the race leader's jersey. It'll take about 250 meters to go for the Slovenian to realize that, heck, I can still keep race leader's yellow jersey, and he throws in a massive acceleration, putting gaps into everyone. Not time gaps, but still gaps back there where they're hurting to the line. And then Pogačar will hold on to the race leader's jersey here at the Tour de France. Leonard Kamna have to be satisfied with a second on the general classification. Jonas Vingegaard will move into third in the top 10. Now, it was an exciting stage here, and in the top 10, we see Luis Leon Sanchez, who rounds out the top 10 of the podium. Fantastic stage, 25 guys going up the road, and whenever you see that with a little bit of rest from the protest, you know it's going to be an exciting finish. I did not do this last 22 kilometers justice here, so if you have time, go back and watch from the bottom of the climb all the way up the climb, because there was 100 different attacks. Bettiol doing a solid job for his teammate Magnus Cort Nelson to allow him to sit on the back. Sanchez did amazing acceleration at 6 kilometers to go. And then Magnus Cort Nelson coming through at 50 meters to go, neck and neck with Nick Schultz that takes a bike throw to the line. And honestly, this bike throw might have been the difference because Magnus Cort Nelson threw just a little bit earlier before Nick Schultz, and that'll leave the bike exchange rider having to settle for second here on today's stage 10. But keep in mind, when we're talking about the race leaders, Tadej Pogacar's tactics here from UAE team members, fabulous, guys. No complaints whatsoever. This was exactly what to do. When you have Vegard Stakulengen out for COVID, then you lose George Bennett out for COVID. You got possibly a third COVID rider with Rafael Majka who might not be able to start tomorrow's stage. You got to believe you got to keep everybody else you got healthy. They did that. There was no threat on the yellow jersey. Even if they give it away to Leonard Kamna, then it just means maybe Bora Hansgrohe will ride in the peloton on tomorrow's stage 11. Congratulations for some fantastic tactics here for UAE team members. They still held the race leader's jersey at the end, just by a nudge when it comes to the seconds. But Leonard Kamna, great ride. Nice try to salvage out getting the yellow race leader's jersey here on the final stage. Just came up short. That's the way it is. That's bike racing. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next edition of the Butterfly Effect for stage 11.